It was a crisp autumn evening in New York City, the kind where the air felt electric with possibility. Michael Jordan, at the height of his powers at age 30, had just finished a charity event at Madison Square Garden, dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that accentuated his athletic 6'6" frame. He moved through the venue with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to being the center of attention. The Chicago Bulls superstar was in town for a preseason exhibition game the following day, but tonight was about raising money for inner-city youth basketball programs, a cause close to his heart. As he chatted with donors, signed autographs, and posed for photos, he maintained the polished professionalism that had made him not just a basketball icon, but a global brand. The official portion of the evening had concluded, and Michael was enjoying a quiet moment with a small group of event organizers and sponsors in a VIP lounge overlooking the arena floor. Madison Square Garden, the self-proclaimed world's most famous arena, had been transformed for the charity gala, but workers were already beginning to restore it to its basketball configuration for tomorrow's game. Michael watched with mild interest, sipping a sparkling water as the conversations flowed around him. Despite his fame, he had always appreciated these moments of relative normalcy when he could briefly blend into the background and observe rather than be observed. His mind drifted to tomorrow's game, mentally reviewing plays and strategies as was his habit, when a commotion at the entrance to the lounge caught his attention. A man in his mid-30s with disheveled hair and a rumpled suit stumbled into the VIP area, his movements uncoordinated and his voice carrying loudly across the room. "Is that him? Is that really Michael Air Jordan?" the man slurred, pointing in Michael's direction while security personnel attempted to intercept him. The room fell silent as all eyes shifted between Jordan and the unexpected intruder. The man, clearly intoxicated, had somehow talked his way past the initial security checkpoint. Later it would be discovered he had flashed an old press credential from his days as a sports blogger. Michael straightened up slightly, his expression remaining neutral as he assessed the situation. He had dealt with overzealous fans before, and while this wasn't the time or place he would have chosen, he remained composed. "Sir, you need to leave," one of the security guards said firmly, taking the man by the arm. But the intruder shook him off with surprising agility for someone so visibly drunk. "I just want to talk to Mike. Come on, man, give a fan a chance," he protested, his voice echoing in the now silent room. Michael caught the eye of his personal security detail and gave a subtle nod, indicating he wasn't feeling threatened. After years in the spotlight, he had developed a sixth sense for distinguishing between harmless enthusiasm and actual danger, and something about this guy registered as the former. "It's all right," Michael said to the security team, his deep voice calm and controlled. "Let's see what he has to say." The guards remained close but allowed the man to approach. As the intruder made his way across the room, weaving slightly, Michael noticed he was wearing mismatched Jordan sneakers, one red and one black, both showing signs of heavy wear. There was something almost endearing about his obvious fandom, despite the inappropriate entrance. "Mr. Jordan," the man said, suddenly seeming to realize the scene he was creating and attempting to straighten his posture and appearance. "I'm your biggest fan. Been following your career since North Carolina." He extended his hand, which trembled slightly, whether from nerves or alcohol was hard to tell. Michael shook it firmly, maintaining eye contact. "Appreciate the support," he replied evenly, hoping a brief acknowledgement would satisfy the man and bring the encounter to a swift conclusion. But the fan wasn't done. "I've played ball my whole life," he continued, gaining confidence as Michael hadn't immediately dismissed him. "Never made it past high school varsity, but I've got a mean jump shot." The room remained uncomfortably silent, the other guests watching the interaction with a mixture of embarrassment and curiosity. Michael nodded politely, having heard similar claims from countless fans over the years. What happened next, however, caught even him by surprise. "I bet I could beat you in a game of horse," the man declared loudly, his alcohol-induced confidence reaching new heights. "Right now, one game. If I win, you give me your autograph on my shoes. If you win—" He trailed off, apparently not having thought that far ahead. A ripple of nervous laughter spread through the room. Security began to move in again, but Michael held up his hand to stop them. Something about the man's earnest challenge amused him. After a full day of polite conversation and PR-friendly interactions, there was something refreshingly direct about this bizarre request. Michael Jordan was, at his core, a competitor. It didn't matter if his opponent was Magic Johnson in the NBA Finals or a random drunk guy at a charity event. The prospect of competition, any competition, piqued his interest. "You know who I am, right?" Michael asked, a hint of his legendary competitive nature showing through his calm exterior. The question hung in the air for a moment, and even the intoxicated fan seemed to recognize the absurdity of his challenge. "Of course I know who you are," the man replied, swaying slightly. "You're the GOAT, but even the greatest can have an off night, and I'm feeling lucky." More laughter from the onlookers, less nervous now and more genuinely amused. Michael's inner circle exchanged glances, recognizing the gleam in his eye that typically preceded something unexpected. Jordan had made a career not just of athletic excellence, but of moments that transcended the game and became part of sports mythology. His PR team began to shift nervously, clearly concerned about the optics of their client, engaging with an intoxicated fan in an impromptu basketball challenge. But Michael was already weighing the situation with the same rapid calculation he applied to split-second decisions on the court. "What's your name?" Michael asked, setting down his sparkling water. The man blinked, seemingly surprised that the conversation was continuing. Tony Myers," he replied, standing up straighter. "Well, Tony," Michael said, unbuttoning his suit jacket, "normally I'd take that bet, but we've got a problem." He gestured around the VIP lounge, which, despite its luxury, was hardly suited for a game of horse. Tony's face fell, the reality of the situation finally breaking through his alcohol-induced confidence. But then Michael did something that surprised everyone in the room. He nodded toward the floor of Madison Square Garden, visible through the large windows of the lounge, where workers were finishing setting up the court for tomorrow's game. "That court down there, though, that might work." The room erupted in murmurs of disbelief. Was Michael Jordan, six-time NBA champion, five-time MVP, and the face of global basketball, seriously considering playing a drunk fan in a game of horse at Madison Square Garden? The event organizers looked at each other in confusion, unsure whether to intervene. Michael's personal manager stepped forward, his expression a mix of concern and resignation. "Mike, we have that dinner reservation at 8, and the team meeting later," he began. But Michael waved him off. "Reschedule," he said simply. Then, turning back to Tony, whose expression had transformed from disappointment to shock, he added with the faintest hint of a smile, "Unless you're not feeling so lucky anymore." Tony Myers, suddenly looking considerably more sober, swallowed hard. "Are you serious? You'll actually play me?" The disbelief in his voice was palpable. Michael was already removing his suit jacket and handing it to an assistant. "One game of horse," he confirmed. "But we're raising money for charity tonight, so let's make it interesting." His mind was working quickly, the competitor in him blending with the businessman and the philanthropist. "If you win, you get the signed shoes. My shoes, not yours, and bragging rights for life. If I win, you donate $10,000 to tonight's charity." He paused, watching as Tony's face registered the significant sum. "Don't worry if you can't pay it all at once. We can work out a payment plan." There was no malice in Michael's proposition. In fact, there was almost a playfulness to it, as if he was genuinely enjoying this unexpected turn of events. Tony hesitated for only a moment before nodding vigorously. "Deal," he said, extending his hand again, this time with more purpose. As they shook on it, the room buzzed with excitement. Michael's team sprang into action, some making calls to clear the use of the court, others managing the PR angle that was rapidly developing as news of the impromptu challenge spread through the remaining staff and security at the Garden. Within minutes, what had started as a drunk fan's outlandish request was transforming into an event. As Michael and Tony made their way out of the VIP lounge toward the elevators that would take them down to the court level, someone in the group had the foresight to start filming. Little did they know that what was about to unfold would become one of the most unexpected and entertaining episodes in Michael Jordan's storied career. A reminder that sometimes the most memorable moments in sports happen far from the spotlight of official competition. The news spread through Madison Square Garden like wildfire. What had begun as a bizarre encounter in a VIP lounge was rapidly evolving into an impromptu event that nobody had anticipated. As Michael Jordan and Tony Myers made their way down to the court level, accompanied by a growing entourage of security personnel, PR staff, and curious onlookers, word of the challenge reached the maintenance crew and remaining event staff. By the time the elevator doors opened to the tunnel leading to the court, a small crowd had already begun to gather. The maintenance workers paused their tasks, clipboard-wielding coordinators stopped mid-conversation, and security guards abandoned their posts, all drawn by the magnetic pull of an unexpected Jordan appearance. Michael walked with purpose, his dress shirt now with the sleeves rolled up and his tie loosened, while Tony followed in a state of apparent disbelief, occasionally muttering, "This is really happening," to no one in particular. The main arena lights were at half strength, creating a dramatic atmosphere as they emerged onto the legendary court of Madison Square Garden. The space, which would tomorrow be filled with 20,000 screaming fans, now stood nearly empty, a vast cathedral of sports awaiting its congregation. The sound of their dress shoes echoed on the hardwood as they approached center court. One of the maintenance workers, recognizing the significance of the moment, quickly moved to adjust the lighting, bringing the court to full illumination while leaving the seating areas dim. The effect was theatrical, as if the court itself was a stage set for an exclusive performance. Michael surveyed the space with the comfortable familiarity of a performer who had conquered this venue many times before. For Tony, whose liquid courage was rapidly giving way to the sobering reality of what he had initiated, the brightness of the court lights seemed to amplify his predicament. "Someone get this man some proper shoes," Michael called out, eyeing Tony's dress shoes. "And we'll need a ball." His voice carried the natural authority of someone accustomed to having his requests immediately fulfilled. Within minutes, Tony found himself sitting on the Bulls bench, being fitted with a pair of basketball shoes that a quick-thinking staff member had procured from the arena's stockroom. They weren't Jordans, which seemed to amuse Michael. "Playing me in another brand? That's bold," he joked, creating a moment of levity that helped ease Tony's visibly growing nerves. Meanwhile, Michael had removed his own dress shoes and was being handed a pair of Air Jordans that seemed to materialize out of nowhere, one of the perks of being the face of the world's most famous basketball shoe line. A regulation NBA ball was produced, and as Michael took it in his hands, bouncing it experimentally on the gleaming hardwood, the familiar rhythm seemed to transform him subtly from businessman to athlete. By now, word had spread beyond the confines of the arena. The initial videos taken by Michael's entourage had made their way to social media, and what had started as a trickle of curious garden employees was turning into a stream of people finding excuses to enter the arena. Security staff, recognizing they couldn't stem the tide, instead focused on maintaining order as off-duty employees. Journalists who had been covering the charity event, and even a few celebrities who had attended the gala, began filling the lower bowl of seats. Camera phones were raised, capturing the scene that no one had expected to witness. Tony, now properly shod and standing at center court, looked around in growing alarm at the audience that had materialized to witness either his moment of glory or, more likely, his humiliation. "Just pretend they're not there," Michael advised, though his own career had been defined by thriving under the gaze of millions. "It's just you and me playing a game of horse." "HORSE," Michael explained unnecessarily, spinning the ball on his finger with casual mastery. "I make a shot. You have to make the same shot. If you miss, you get a letter. First to spell horse loses." Tony nodded, his earlier bravado now tempered by the reality of facing the greatest basketball player on the planet. "I know how to play horse, Mr. Jordan," he said, attempting to reclaim some dignity. Michael smiled, a predatory gleam in his eye that countless NBA opponents had come to fear. "Since you issued the challenge," he said, bouncing the ball to Tony, "you go first." The gesture was sporting, but everyone present knew it was also strategic. Michael wanted to see what this bold challenger could do before revealing his own arsenal. Tony caught the ball, its leather surface momentarily sobering him with its reality. This was happening. He was playing Michael Jordan in Madison Square Garden. Tony took a deep breath, dribbled twice and moved to the free throw line, the safest, most conventional starting point for a game of horse. As he prepared to shoot, his hands trembling slightly, a voice called out from the growing crowd, "Come on, man, you challenged Jordan and you're shooting free throws?" Laughter rippled through the audience, and Tony's face flushed with embarrassment. Michael, sensing the moment could turn uncomfortable, stepped in. "Hey," he said, loud enough for the heckler to hear, "in this game, smart beats flashy. A point's a point." The intervention had its intended effect, quieting the crowd and giving Tony a moment to regain his composure. With a grateful nod to Jordan, Tony squared up, released the ball with decent form, and watched as it arced through the air, hit the back rim, bounced up, and dropped through the net. A small cheer went up from the audience, more supportive than impressed, but Tony raised his arms in triumph nonetheless. Michael moved to the exact spot Tony had shot from, his movements fluid and practiced. He held the ball, aligned his body, and released it with the textbook form that had made his jump shot one of the most studied in basketball history. The ball traveled in a perfect arc and swished through the net without touching the rim. No one seemed surprised, least of all Tony, who received the ball back with a nod of acknowledgement. For his second shot, perhaps bolstered by making his first attempt, Tony moved to the three-point line. Again, it wasn't a particularly creative choice, but it represented a step up in difficulty. His form was less confident from this distance, and the ball hit the rim hard, bounced up, teetered on the edge for a dramatic moment, during which the entire arena seemed to hold its breath, and then fell in. The crowd's reaction was more genuine this time, appreciating both the drama and the fact that their unexpected protagonist was holding his own, at least for now. Michael, stepping to the three-point line, barely seemed to register the distance. His shot was a carbon copy of his first. Perfect form, perfect trajectory, perfect result. Swish. No drama, no uncertainty, just basketball excellence distilled to its purest form. Tony, receiving the ball again, now faced a strategic dilemma. Two conventional shots had gotten him nowhere in terms of gaining an advantage. He needed to try something that might actually challenge the greatest player of all time. But what could possibly test Michael Jordan? In a moment of either inspiration or desperation, Tony moved to half court. The crowd's volume increased immediately, recognizing the significant increase in difficulty. Tony took several dribbles, then launched the ball with both hands, putting his whole body into the shot. The ball soared through the air in a high arc, and the entire arena tracked its flight. It hit the backboard, a miss in horse unless explicitly called, but then improbably caromed directly into the hoop. The crowd erupted in genuine surprise and appreciation. Tony himself looked as shocked as anyone, a disbelieving smile spreading across his face as he turned to Michael with newfound confidence. Michael nodded, a look of mild surprise and respect crossing his features. Moving to the half-court line, he caught the ball and studied the basket with the focus that had defined his career. Unlike Tony, he prepared for a proper jump shot, albeit from an extreme distance. As he rose into the air, his form remained impeccable. Back straight, elbow aligned, wrist flexed in perfect follow-through. The ball left his hands with ideal backspin and sailed toward the hoop with mathematical precision. It hit nothing but net. The crowd's reaction was instantaneous. Gasps, cheers, and the unmistakable buzz of witnessing greatness. Tony's brief moment of advantage had evaporated, replaced by the sobering reminder of exactly who he was playing against. But rather than deflate him, the demonstration seemed to fuel something in Tony, a recognition that he was part of something special, regardless of the outcome. For his next attempt, Tony decided to incorporate some flair. He moved to the right corner, turned his back to the basket, and attempted a shot over his shoulder. It was the kind of shot playground legends practice for hours, but rarely use in actual competition. The ball arced high, came down well short of the rim, and bounced harmlessly away. "H," Michael announced, and the crowd responded with a collective, "Ooh!" Tony accepted the letter with a good-natured shrug, but his eyes revealed genuine competitive fire. The game continued with increasing creativity and difficulty. Tony received an O after failing to match Michael's effortless baseline fadeaway, and an R when he couldn't replicate a smooth finger roll that Jordan executed with balletic grace. With each exchange, the dynamic between them evolved, Michael showing flashes of his renowned competitive instinct, but also a surprising patience and even encouragement, Tony balancing between the awe of facing his idol and a genuine desire to make a respectable showing. The crowd had grown steadily throughout the contest. What had started as a few dozen curious onlookers had swelled to several hundred, their collective energy transforming the impromptu game into something approaching a genuine event. Word had spread beyond the garden now, with social media lighting up as snippets of video circulated. Remarkably, people from outside had begun showing up at the arena's entrances, having caught wind that Michael Jordan was playing a random fan on the main court. Security, overwhelmed by the unexpected situation, had made the decision to allow people in, partly to avoid the growing congestion outside, and partly because the surreal nature of the evening had created a "why not" atmosphere that was difficult to resist. As Tony prepared for what could be his final shot, already carrying HOR, he looked around in amazement at the crowd that had gathered to witness his challenge. There were now at least 1,000 people in the stands, their faces illuminated by the glow of smartphone screens as they documented the unfolding story. For what would likely be his last attempt, Tony decided to go for broke. He moved to the free throw line, the same spot where he had started the game, but then motioned for everyone to give him space. The crowd, sensing something special, quieted down. Tony closed his eyes for a moment, as if channeling something deep within himself, then opened them with newfound determination. He took 3 dribbles, spun the ball in his hands, and then, in a move that drew gasps from the audience, attempted to recreate one of Michael's most iconic moves, a leaping, switching hands layup reminiscent of Jordan's famous finals play against the Lakers. It was ambitious, perhaps overly so for someone of Tony's limited abilities, but it was also perfect for the moment, an homage to the legend he was playing against. As Tony drove, leapt, and attempted to switch the ball from right to left in mid-air, his execution was predictably less than Jordan-esque. He lost control of the ball, which bounced awkwardly off the backboard without coming close to the rim. Michael announced, completing the spelling of horse and ending the game. But what happened next would be what everyone remembered, what would make videos of the encounter go viral and cement the evening in basketball lore. Instead of simply accepting his victory, Michael walked over to Tony and placed a hand on his shoulder. "That was my move," he said, loud enough for the front rows to hear. "Hard to pull off unless you've practiced it a few thousand times." Then, to everyone's astonishment, he added, "Let me show you." What followed was not just a demonstration, but a masterclass. Michael directed Tony to stand in specific spots on the court, showing him the footwork, the timing, the subtle shift of weight that made the move effective. For nearly 15 minutes, Michael Jordan, the global icon, the fierce competitor, the legendary athlete, became simply a basketball teacher, breaking down his techniques for an amateur who had drunkenly challenged him to a game. The crowd watched in reverent silence, witnessing a side of Jordan that was rarely displayed in public, patient, detailed, genuinely interested in sharing his knowledge of the game he had mastered. The impromptu basketball clinic might have continued longer had arena security not approached with urgent news. The crowd outside Madison Square Garden had grown to alarming proportions. What had begun as a trickle of curious fans had become a flood as word spread through social media that Michael Jordan was not only in the building, but was actually playing basketball. The videos from inside had gone viral with extraordinary speed, and now thousands of people were attempting to gain entry, creating a potential safety hazard on the surrounding streets. The head of security conferred briefly with Michael's team and then approached the court with evident concern. "Mr. Jordan," he said, his voice pitched low but urgent, "we have a situation developing. There are nearly 5,000 people outside trying to get in. The NYPD is requesting that we either end this event or formalize it somehow." Michael looked around, seemingly noticing for the first time just how much the crowd inside had grown. There were now at least 2,000 people in the stands, with more streaming in through every entrance. For a moment, Michael was silent, processing the unexpected scale of what had begun as a simple, spontaneous response to a fan's challenge. His competitive exhibition with Tony had somehow transformed into a significant event, one that was now threatening to overwhelm the security protocols of the world's most famous arena. But rather than showing concern, a slow smile spread across Michael's face, the smile that teammates, opponents, and fans had come to recognize as a sign that Jordan was about to rise to a challenge. "Formalize it," he repeated, turning the suggestion over in his mind. Then, with characteristic decisiveness, he turned to his manager. "Call the team. Get whoever's in town to come down here, and find out if the TV crews from tomorrow's game can set up tonight." His manager started to protest that such arrangements would be impossible on such short notice, but Michael cut him off with a wave of his hand. "This is New York City," he said. "Nothing's impossible if you make enough calls." What followed was a testament to the power of Jordan's name and the resourcefulness of his team. Calls were made, strings were pulled, and within an hour, Madison Square Garden was being transformed. The arena's full lighting system was activated, temporarily blinding the crowd that had gathered, but drawing a roar of approval when they realized what it meant. The Bulls staff, already in town for tomorrow's exhibition game, arrived in force, bringing proper warm-up gear, medical personnel, and team security. Several of Michael's teammates, who had been enjoying a night off in the city, showed up in response to hurried phone calls, initially confused but quickly catching the infectious energy of the unfolding situation. Most remarkably, A broadcast crew that had been setting up equipment for the next day's game expedited their preparations, rigging cameras and sound equipment at breakneck speed. As these preparations unfolded, Tony Myers found himself in a surreal position. Having begun the evening as just another fan, albeit one with an unusual amount of liquid courage, he was now at the center of an event rapidly growing in both size and scope. Michael's team had whisked him backstage, where he was being treated with a bizarre mixture of VIP courtesy and bemused tolerance. A team doctor had given him a quick once-over, determining that while he had definitely been drinking, he was coherent enough to participate in whatever was being planned. The Bulls equipment manager had found him a proper uniform, not a Bulls jersey, which would have been a step too far, but high-quality basketball shorts and a T-shirt emblazoned with the NBA logo. When Tony asked with understandable confusion what exactly was happening, a harried staff member had simply replied, "Michael's turning your horse game into a show. Just go with it." By the time Tony was led back to the court, Madison Square Garden had undergone a remarkable transformation. The arena, now fully illuminated, was approaching half capacity, with an estimated 10,000 people having gained entry. The crowd represented a cross-section of New York City, basketball fans who had dropped everything at the news that Michael Jordan was playing an impromptu game, celebrities who had been at the earlier charity event, curious tourists who had been passing by and gotten swept up in the excitement, and everyday New Yorkers, drawn by the magnetic pull of witnessing something extraordinary and unexpected. The court itself had been set up as if for an official NBA contest, with team benches, scorers' tables, and proper game equipment. A hastily assembled announcer's booth was manned by one of the Garden's regular announcers, who had been called at home and rushed in, still wearing jeans below his dress shirt and tie. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed through the arena's sound system, "welcome to what may be the most unexpected basketball event in Madison Square Garden history." The crowd roared in response, the collective energy palpable. "Tonight, we witnessed the response to a challenge that began just hours ago in a VIP lounge upstairs. In this corner," he continued, adopting the cadence of a boxing announcer, "representing the everyday basketball fans of America with a jump shot he claims is mean and a blood alcohol content we can only guess at, Tony Myers." A spotlight found Tony at the edge of the court, causing him to blink in surprise as the crowd cheered with surprising enthusiasm. "And in this corner," the announcer continued, his voice rising dramatically, "six-time NBA champion, five-time MVP, the greatest basketball player on the planet, Michael Air Jordan." The roar that greeted Michael's introduction shook the foundations of the Garden. He emerged from the tunnel in full Bulls warm-up gear, having changed from his formal attire into the uniform that had made him an icon. The crowd, already energized by the unusual circumstances, reached new heights of enthusiasm at the sight of Jordan in his element. Michael acknowledged the reception with a raised hand and that trademark smile, clearly enjoying the spontaneity of the moment. As he approached center court, where Tony waited with a mixture of excitement and terror, the announcers explained what was about to unfold, not just a continuation of their horse game, but an expanded showcase featuring Jordan, several Bulls teammates who had arrived, and, most surprisingly, a few NBA players from other teams who happened to be in New York and had heard about the impromptu event. What followed was basketball at its most joyful and unscripted. The formal structure of the event was loose, part skills competition, part exhibition game, part basketball clinic, but that looseness only added to its charm. Michael began by resuming his horse game with Tony, but now with the added pressure of thousands of spectators and professional commentary. To everyone's surprise, including perhaps his own, Tony rose to the occasion. Whether it was the adrenaline counteracting the alcohol in his system, or simply the once-in-a-lifetime nature of the opportunity, he played above himself, even managing to successfully execute a few of the techniques Michael had shown him earlier. Jordan, for his part, seemed to genuinely enjoy the interaction, playing to the crowd, but also showing genuine appreciation when Tony made a difficult shot. The exhibition expanded as more players arrived. Scottie Pippen, Jordan's legendary Bulls teammate, made a dramatic entrance to thunderous applause, immediately joining the fray with his distinctive all-around skills. Patrick Ewing, the New York Knicks' star center, who had been enjoying a rare night off, showed up in street clothes but was quickly provided with suitable attire, much to the delight of the home crowd. What had begun as a simple challenge evolved into a celebration of basketball itself. Elite players showcasing their skills alongside amateurs, the usual barriers between superstar and fan temporarily dissolved. Throughout it all, Michael remained the gravitational center, directing the flow of the exhibition with the same command he showed on court during championship games. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the evening was how Tony remained involved throughout. Rather than being sidelined once the professionals took over, he was integrated into the exhibition in various ways, attempting to recreate famous Jordan moments, participating in light-hearted skills contests, even being coached through drills by NBA legends. The crowd embraced him as the everyman protagonist of the story, cheering his successes and groaning sympathetically at his inevitable failures. For his part, Tony navigated his improbable circumstances with increasing confidence, the initial shock giving way to genuine enjoyment of his moment in the spotlight. At one point, when he successfully made a three-pointer after Pippen showed him how to improve his form, the arena erupted as if he had hit a game-winning shot in the NBA Finals. As the night progressed, the exhibition took on the qualities of a basketball variety show. Jordan orchestrated a series of one-on-one matchups, skills challenges, and trick shot competitions, always finding ways to keep the energy high and the crowd engaged. The broadcast crew, initially scrambled together for what they thought might be a short segment, found themselves documenting a full-fledged event, complete with replays, graphics, and color commentary. Most surprisingly, a hastily assembled live stream had been set up, allowing basketball fans around the world to tune in to the unexpected spectacle. Social media metrics would later show that by the end of the night, more than 20 million people had watched at least part of the stream, making it one of the most viewed impromptu sporting events in history. Around the 2-hour mark, with Madison Square Garden now completely full and the energy showing no signs of diminishing, Michael called for everyone's attention. The arena fell silent as he took a microphone at center court, Tony standing beside him, looking simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated. "I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight," Jordan began, his voice echoing through the now-packed arena. "This wasn't on anyone's schedule, but sometimes the best moments in life are the ones you don't plan for." The crowd roared in agreement. "Tonight started because this man," he continued, placing a hand on Tony's shoulder, "had the courage, or maybe just enough drinks to challenge me to a game. And while I won that game," he paused as laughter rippled through the crowd, "I think we can all agree that Tony here is the real winner tonight." The applause that followed was deafening, and Tony's face flushed with emotion. But Michael wasn't finished. "Now, we made a bet," he reminded everyone. "If Tony won, he'd get my signed shoes. If I won, he'd donate $10,000 to charity." He turned to Tony with a mischievous smile. "I did win, but I'm not sure it's fair to collect from a man I just publicly humiliated." More laughter from the crowd. "So here's what we're going to do instead." Jordan signaled to someone off stage, and a large check was brought out, made out to the charity from the earlier gala but with the amount space still blank. "For every person in this arena tonight," Michael announced, "I'm going to donate $100 to the youth basketball programs we were supporting earlier today." A gasp went through the crowd as people did the quick math. With approximately 20,000 people now in attendance, that would mean a $2 million donation. "And," Jordan continued, "since Tony here provided us all with such great entertainment tonight, he gets to choose another charity to receive the same amount." Tony's expression of shock was captured on the arena's jumbotron, drawing appreciative laughter from the crowd. When handed the microphone, he was initially speechless, but then gathered himself. "My sister has multiple sclerosis," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "So, the National MS Society, if that's okay." Michael nodded approval, and the crowd erupted in supportive applause. As the night drew to a close, there was one final moment that would cement the evening in basketball folklore. Michael presented Tony with the promised signed shoes. Not just any shoes, but a custom pair of Air Jordans in Bulls colors with Horse Game Champion embroidered on the side, a playful acknowledgement of the evening's origins despite the actual result. But then, in a gesture that surprised everyone, Michael removed his Bulls jersey, signed it, and handed it to Tony as well. "Something to remember tonight by," he said into the microphone, "and maybe to remind you to be careful what you wish for." The crowd laughed, but there was genuine warmth in the moment, a recognition that what had transpired, for all its unexpectedness, had been something special. The next day, the exhibition game between the Bulls and the Knicks would go on as scheduled, but it would be overshadowed in media coverage by the previous night's impromptu event. Sports analysts would discuss it for weeks, Fans would share videos across every platform, and the Jordan Horse Challenge, as it came to be known, would take its place in the rich tapestry of basketball lore. For Michael Jordan, it would become another chapter in his legacy of transcendent moments. For Madison Square Garden, it would be added to the venue's storied history of legendary nights. And for Tony Myers, it would transform his life, from being just another fan to becoming part of one of basketball's most unlikely and entertaining stories. But beyond the individual impacts, the night stood as a testament to sport's unique power to create community, to break down barriers, and to transform an ordinary evening into something extraordinary. It had begun with a drunk man's improbable challenge and ended with 20,000 people sharing in a moment of unexpected joy, proof that sometimes the most memorable games are the ones that were never supposed to happen at all.